All right. Hi, everybody. It's our CFB Talk. It's Tuesday night. We're here to talk with you. Another day here in college football's off season. Always a little bit dry, especially with the Super Bowl happening. But, we're now in the doldrums. We're going to start the slow steam ahead as we get spring football coming up and heading towards what should be an interesting 2023 season. A lot of stuff going on, kind of as people logistically set up what's coming up for next season. I mean, actually, I was fascinated to see the announcement for Big 12 Media Days coming up because there's going to be 14 teams because everybody's going to be there, including Oklahoma and Texas for that last go around. So it should be interesting to see everyone together for what should be a few interesting days in Texas. Big 12 Media Day has always been an interesting one. We've had an opportunity to cover it a few years in a row, but there'll be extra kind of juicy tension heading into this. A lot of folks have been having fun with the fact that, of course, the Aggies and Longhorns are going to be in the conference finally again together when the Longhorns join the SEC. Jason Kirk has a tweet that I've just absolutely thought was hilarious. Came out, a couple of days ago. Maybe some of you saw it. The Aggies and Longhorns should be week one every year. The winner then bears all their combined gigantic offseason hype, while the losers in instant crisis mode. And he suggests do it every year on week zero, just so the whole world can see. I think that would be a delight, especially if we get that rivalry back. The complete. I love how, I mean, a lot of fans have wanted to see it back. The kind of song and dance that both programs have done to avoid returning to that rivalry has been a little bit irritating, even including opportunities to even potentially play postseason games ever since Texas A&M left the Big 12. So it'll be nice to see that again. But I love that idea of just having them play in week one every year. And just, can you imagine? I mean, either Texas is back or Texas A&M is on the Aggie hype train. I think it'll be a blast. But again, anything you want to talk about in college football, if you'd like to join me up here and share your view, we'd love to hear it. Just hit request. It's our CFB Talk. Another article that I thought was kind of interesting was, again, it was fun to see ahead of the Super Bowl, to see some of the joy that comes from all the programs that have players that are heading into the Super Bowl. And Alabama and Oklahoma tweeted identical videos wishing Jalen Hurts luck in the Super Bowl. Obviously, it could have gone. We know how the game ended, but it was just sort of, that's something you like to see, because in the end, a lot of these folks, especially at that caliber of player, you could argue the same thing with someone like a Caleb Williams. Their goal is to reach the NFL, and every stop they have, especially when they do well at those stops, does a lot to build that career, build that reputation. So again, that was something I think a lot of fans on RCFB like to see, and I know a lot of folks in college football like to see. I mean, here's a neutral fan, so to speak, Texas A&M fan, Admiral Tarkin. Jalen Hurts is one of my favorite SEC players ever. Seeing him take his benching with class was something you won't see from 70% plus of quarterbacks. Echoed by an LSU fan. I loathe Bama. However, watching Saban get a little choked up talking up about Jalen after the 2018 SEC championship game was amazing. You simply can't help but root for him in these circumstances. So again, a lot of joy, a lot of happiness from fans, again, before the actual game itself, which was a delight, especially if you're a Kansas City fan. Got a couple of friends who are both on our CFB and I guess in real life. But again, if you'd like to join and give your thoughts on college football, feel free to hit request. These are opportunities to chat. I know it's Valentine's Day for a lot of people, and for some people, it's a welcome break just to have something to listen to. I know I've had a chance to be out there. It's been fun. A little chaotic where I'm at. I'm not entirely sure why, but hopefully wherever you are, you're enjoying your weekend and you're enjoying your week and you're enjoying your evening. One thing I did mean to mention right at the outset is all of us at RCFB, we really our hearts go out to what's going on over at Michigan State. The events of yesterday were tragic, and I know a lot of folks. I mean, it's just a tragedy, no matter how you slice it. And we wish just the hurt for all those folks who were affected to hopefully to process the way it needs to go, and in a way that can hopefully get some lesson out of all of it. And it's just an awful thing to have happen, and our thoughts are to everyone over at Michigan State. Changing gears again, another topic. Again, if you'd like to join the conversation, please hit request. Some fans of The Last of Us, which obviously has been this phenomenon on this new television show. It's a bit of a phenomenon. I always want to say on television, but it's weird to say that in this era of streaming. I guess that shows my age. But obviously, it's based on a video game, and that it was so far successfully adapted for the screen. But someone who was a fan of The Last of Us, Matt Brown of Extra Points, who's always kind of the master of kind of these sort of squirrely stories, and loves to cover the NCAA football game. He just read a post that pointed out that Alabama's last football game, based on the dates in the show The Last of Us universe, would have been that infamous loss to Northern Illinois. And he hopes that the show will eventually address that somehow. Goodness. Oh my gosh. I just think that's fun when people observe that. Because I mean, one of the classic kind of moments in movies and television where fans who know anything about college football realize it's kind of absurd. If you ever go and watch Die Hard, obviously, as some people like to joke, one of those great Christmas movies, early on in the film, one of the security guards at Nakatomi Tower, who's just sort of chilling before the terrorists come in, he's watching USC Notre Dame. Of course, that would make it Christmas Day, which anyone who knows anything about college football, that's not when you play a regular season game. So sometimes, fans who really pay attention get a kick out of those sorts of things. Just kind of going back to what Matt Brown observed with The Last of Us, if you go with the timeline that's observed in that show, the last college football national championship, this is his own words, before the fungus spores destroy humanity, of course, would have been the the world famous Ohio State Buckeyes. So anyway, if you're a fan of The Last of Us, it's kind of fun to see where that falls into play. Going back to that Die Hard comment, I think the only reason why they decided to throw USC Notre Dame on the screen rather than, I don't know, an NFL game or something that might fit a Christmas theme, they decided to. I'm pretty sure it's because USC is a film school. Usually they'll tuck things in there. It looks like we have someone who wants to join us, so I'm going to go ahead and let you up. I'd love to hear from you. All Dressed Father, when you're up here, feel free to hit unmute. Hey, All Dressed Father, I just see you got joined. Feel free to hit unmute. Love to hear from you.
Howdy. I just want to lead off with I pretend that is a college basketball game and not a college football game. Otherwise, it would make me angry.
Absolutely. What about it made you so? What about the football aspect made you so angry?
It's just the fact that it is Christmas Day. Just having that long of a detail, like I get their rivalry,
and it's like even The Godfather 2, there's a moment where, oh gosh, I forgot the gangster in Miami Beach. He's also happens to be watching TV in the background, and it's a USC UCLA game. And I don't know, maybe it was a go-to for a while, but I'd like to see also some more teams represented in that, because it's just, I mean, okay, when that movie was set, perhaps, but but Die Hard and other films, let's see some more college football teams end up in films and in the background. I mean, gosh knows Florida State's got a decent film school. Their students would always typically win like little student awards over the years, and I'm sure that turned into some lucrative film contracts. So yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we'll see some more of those tucked in. So what are your thoughts so far in the off season?
So far, I am waiting for the next wave of realignment. Personally, I'm waiting for that Pac-12 deal to fall through and the Pac-12 dissolve.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I have to ask you then, what is your thoughts? Where would you like to see if the Pac-12 were to dissolve? Where would you like those programs to go?
Well, I think the Big 12 is a natural fit for like half the conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Especially the former corner.
Oregon, Washington find their way in the Big 10. Stanford might join them as well. And then Oregon State and Washington State are just they're going to be the real victims in this.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. It seems like every time anyone tries to figure out what happens to the conference if it implodes, those are the two programs, Wazoo and Oregon State, as generally liked as they are outside of their purest rivals, and obviously Oregon and Washington. They're kind of lovable, kind of like teams that try and occasionally will punch above their weight, make the Rose Bowl, like or just something of that nature, And then at this point, if the Pac-12 does not successfully expand and breaks apart, those are the two that seem to be likely candidates for. And again, nothing wrong with the Mountain West, but it doesn't have the same cachet or payout.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that would be a big step down. I mean, I'm hoping that even if the Pac-12 doesn't necessarily add what appears to be a strong desire for San Diego State and SMU over in the Metroplex, they'll probably stick together only because of the way they expanded the playoff, which seems to have suddenly. I thought the biggest winner of the expanded playoff was the Pac-12 because it looked like they are the Big 12 and maybe the Big 12 as well in the sense that they were about to get into a knife fight over survival for
Right.
now that the Big 10 and SEC were becoming the kings and the ACC was just kind of stuck in its own little universe. But in a way that you couldn't poach teams from the ACC, they were much more the way their contract goes. It's much more complicated to steal a team from them. So
Well,
now you'd have.
I was hoping that that would also tidal wave into the ACC as well. Like the ripple effect of the Pac-12 dissolving would also collapse the ACC.
Oh wow, that's a
That
that
one's
would be
I'd rather the
if
Pac-12 all like stay together. I'd love for the ACC to just implode and die.
mm.
Definitely not a salty UConn fan at all, but
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Now some of your thoughts on that make a little bit more sense. Yeah, I don't know. And it's so funny too. I think the reason the playoff I think is going to keep things the way they are is the way it allowing so many of these potential conference winners to go in. Suddenly the Pac-12 doesn't feel quite as lost. Certainly the money's going to make an impact over time, though, or at least the lower amount that they're going to get compared to,
right.
US and UCLA in the Big Ten, but it
But
keeps them at least somewhat alive. But
a
yeah,
free
exactly.
playoff spot is that's huge.
It is
And the
absolutely.
fact that and you got to think that the deans at both USC and UCLA are kicking themselves that was announced after they decided to join the Big Ten.
Oh, I'll say this much: they're like that classic scene out of Zombieland with Woody Harrelson wiping his tears with $100 bills, because the net benefit there, because that was the bitterness between, from what all the reporting seemed to indicate, the bitterness with USC and UCLA and the Pac-12 wasn't was the money. That's what it came down to, and even this new playoff structure, although it gives access to the remaining teams. I would be concerned that it still won't necessarily boost the finances for them. Although, I mean, gosh, the Big 12 certainly seems to have survived the best in all of this of those two conferences, even losing Texas and Oklahoma, because they certainly brought in some
Good
interesting
on
new.
because like everyone thought that when Oklahoma and Texas were like left for dead.
Oh yeah, and it's funny too. Gosh,
It was
if you
pick the carcass, and I'm impressed that they were actually able to survive.
it was some smart moves, and I mean, I have some faith in the new conference commissioner Brett Yormark. I've met him in passing, and he's a pretty dynamic guy. So he seems to have that energy to kind of keep that conference together and keep them relevant. One of the things that reminded me of talking about whether or not the Pac-12 who would benefit the least if the Pac-12 were. I mean, no one would really benefit from it, but if the Pac-12 were to come apart, this story was actually kind of something that was discussed, gosh, back in, about 13 years ago, when it looked like the Big 12 might collapse, when it looked like the Pac-12 was making a serious play for Texas and Oklahoma, and
Yep.
it supposedly came apart due to some.
I was actually also reading an article on that today.
Yeah, and I remember when they were trying to figure out what would happen to the members remaining in the Big 12, the teams that seemed the least likely to have a benefit were, I mean, to some extent, unsurprising. Iowa State, okay, maybe K-State would have trouble finding a new home, but the one that surprised some people was Kansas. And the reason, the logic at the time was, yes, Kansas is a basketball power, and their football wasn't quite as bad as it really kind of hit the bottom as it did in that following decade. But the issue was basketball just didn't make as much money as football, so that made them a little less desirable. I mean, the football program at some of the other programs, and also just simply being in Texas made those schools more attractive. I know because that was, I believe, after A&M had already agreed to leave and join the SEC. So the Pac-12 was trying to bring in 4 teams, and they were trying to get in. Oklahoma straight up voiced indirect interest. They were not messing around about that. Texas was really kind of oblivious to it and kind of kept their decision to stay kept the rest of it together. But they were trying to figure out who the other 2 teams would be. They wanted to bring 4 and make it like the Pac-16, and it was going to end up being like, I think it was ending up being Texas Tech, pardon me, and Oklahoma State. And of course, it never happened. But I still remember there were discussions just like we're having now about, well, if the Pac-12, I mean, I think they're going to stay together at this point. But the same thing, like what happens if they kind of come apart? You know, we have someone else up here who wanted to join the conversation.
Yeah.
Cajun Killer 94, what's up?
Check 1 2. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
See, the problem with realignment is all the teams that is basically far away from the conference's middle. Because if you remember, at one point in the mid 2000s, the Sun Belt Conference had. You know where I'm going with this?
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Oh Lord, what school is in Las Cruces? Is that New Mexico or New Mexico State?
New Mexico State.
It had New Mexico State and Idaho. At one point,
Multiple times.
Idaho had to go down to Florida Atlantic to play a conference game.
Yeah, I remember that.
A Sun Belt Conference game at the Kibbe Dome. That is peak college football.
I remember because they got raided by Conference USA. I vividly remember Conference USA had raided them actually a few times over the years. I mean, at one point, before they even sponsored football, they got raided by Conference USA. It was like the second nature of the of the program of that conference. When they needed to get more people, they just poached them from there because they lost so many key teams at that time because they were looking strong. And then they lost, North Texas. They lost Florida Atlantic. FAU. They lost Middle Tennessee. Tennessee. FIU.
I was forgetting that 14 because why we had New Mexico State and Idaho it was still at the time where the NCAA said you must have 12 or 14 teams to have a conference championship game.
It was, I think, at least 12.
Yeah, 12.
That's why we got the Navy to join the AAC.
And when those 4 teams got poached off, we had 10. And they really wanted a conference championship game. So they added Idaho and New Mexico State.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And it got so awkward, too, because then as soon as the NCAA revised that rule and said you didn't need the extra teams, they immediately kicked them out again, which is just so.
New Mexico State, I could see, because our farthest western team is Texas State. And New Mexico State just outside of El Paso, but Idaho.
Yeah, Idaho is definitely the odd duck.
You also have to think that, like, New Braunfels is 7-8 hours from El Paso.
Yeah. Well, if you drive down I-10 from Orange, Texas, which is at the Louisiana-Texas border, to El Paso, is 12 hours. 12 hours just in one state.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always incredible to think who was in that conference at one point or another. I mean, either affiliate or full members. They've had everyone from UAB to UCF to FAU, FIU, Louisiana Tech. I remember when they were
they can go. You know who I call Louisiana Tech? The Buns, the bastards up north.
They and I feel bad for that program because they, and to an even greater extent, Louisiana Monroe, ULM, they have a tough road because they're always competing against the SEC. their footprint is quite small. I remember talking. Gosh, this is back when. What was his name? But I talked to the ULM coach at the first time I ever covered Sunbelt Media Days, and I just asked him like, "What's recruiting even like?" He's like, "Look, our budget is teeny, and all our recruiting for football, and this is at the time. I mean, it may have changed, but ULM at the time was Todd Berry. That was who it was, Coach Todd Berry. He was like, all we can really recruit is Southern Arkansas and Northern Louisiana, and maybe a little bit further, but our budget, we just don't have it." And I just, when you hear that, you're like, my goodness, it really underlined the difference in the arms race among teams supposedly in the FBS, but it's what they compete against. It's astonishing.
And this is why I mean I've been against UConn moving down in football, because we have the ability to recruit a lot more than any FCS team. We don't need to go down to FCS.
No.
Yeah. I think this last season really helped UConn just in terms of perception a lot. I mean, I think a lot of folks did not expect that level of success, let alone out of Jim Mora's first, is his first or second season?
First season.
Yeah. So
I thought 3 wins was the maximum.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because Mora, he's not incompetent. He just always does this thing where he'll coach a team and then he'll get fired, and then he'll take a long break. And then he'll come back. Because I remember that's what happened at UCLA. They hired him and was like, oh, he wants to coach again. Okay. Yeah. And then he did fine there, and it kind of petered out after a strong start. And everyone says like he likes to just sit out his buyout. He just likes to sit it out. He's not in a rush to go coaching again. And then everyone was like, oh, okay, UConn. Wow. I mean, not a terrible hire. He certainly can coach people, but just to get to a bowl, man, that is one of the surprising.
We did that without our offensive coordinator. One of our.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, there were major injuries for UConn.
Jim Moore reminds me of a very old saying: "Like father, like son." As a Saints fan, we all know about that.
Hey, by the way, so Cajun Killer, who's your team? Is it? I mean, I don't want to make assumptions here, but what team is do you like to follow in college football?
The University of Louisiana.
Oh, Raging Cajuns.
Yep.
I was gonna say Warhawks.
Oh, don't do that. No.
I'm in my car right now. Don't make me hit the interstate now. Hey.
So how you feeling?
Fan. You know how I know that? If you pull up where Cajun Field right now is on Google Maps, there's a hospital right across the street from it. I was born in that hospital.
Oh wow. That's great. So you've been there. Wow. So do you still live in the area or?
Yeah, I live about 10, 15 minutes, depends on traffic, from all the stadiums.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I mean, last season was a little disappointing. What are you thinking heading into year 2?
I do not know. I love Coach Daz, but I mean, we just got so many players that went into transfer portal after why the hell am I blanking on his name?
Napier.
Yeah.
After Napier left, because the school was founded in 1898. He was our very first coach to get poached from us.
Wow, really?
Yep.
I never even realized that he was the first.
Yep, not even Coach Stokely, no one. It was Coach Napier.
Well, for good reasons, certainly. I mean, but yeah, wow. I'm trying to think, like, because it's not like, I mean, because I remember, about around the millennium, about 2000, 2001, 2003, somewhere in that range. I know I skipped you there, but it was tough for Louisiana. It was tough down there. I mean, as far as sometimes when I'd read the bottom 10 and ESPN, they'd get the butt of the jokes. But it has been they've been successful now though. Regularly. I mean, they used to be, they used to be a regular visitor at the at the New Orleans Bowl, and I mean, there was like 3 years in a row where they were there, or 4 years in a row. I remember that little stretch.
Because that was back in the days when Sun Belt only had one bowl.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you know why we love why the New Orleans Bowl loves us?
Because you bring the home crowd.
I can get on I-10 right now, and within 3 hours, before midnight right now, I could be on Bourbon Street with a beer in my hand.
I am so jealous. I live in Minnesota, man. You have no idea how jealous it is. It was ice cold rain all day, and it sucks because that was a warm day. You know what that means? Tomorrow morning, it's all going to be frozen. So it's going to be the car. Like the ice capades. It's going to be the car capades tomorrow when I try to take my kids to school and go work, all that stuff. But man, and I just going back. Going back to that stretch that Louisiana was doing great. Did Coach Hud just stay too long? Because I was so shocked no one poached him. And then I remembered, he kind of petered out at the end and was shown the door. But man, it's just stunning to me.
To me, Coach Hud is one of those coaches who is an excellent recruiter more than an actual coach. But he's had problems because you remember we had to forfeit a bunch of wins.
Oh, yeah.
But that was before his time. He was just the coach when it came out. But it wasn't there in his tenure.
No, I remember because Austin P, he lasted there for like one season, seemed great, did awesome, 11 wins, first 11-win season in their history. And then he left after one season. And, you knew something was up when it was the classic, I'm going to go spend more time with my family. And then unfortunately, well, I mean, I don't know if unfortunate, but it sure turns out like he just was unacceptable conduct. I don't know the exact details. But yeah, so maybe didn't really work out there.
Shout out the Governors, though.
Yeah, exactly.
I think last time I checked, he was coaching a high school in Alabama.
Yeah, Gulf Shores. Yeah, he's at Gulf Shores High School.
In 5 years, he went from the school's very first New Orleans Bowl to coaching a high school in Alabama.
Oh man, well, hey, maybe he'll find a second, another opportunity to rise up. Although, he's still young enough. He's in his 50s, his early mid 50s. He might find his way back out again and maybe he'll find his way into the assistant coaching ranks of college because he's got to be attractive. I mean, he isn't a total like disaster, and if he's a good recruiter, he's a good recruiter. And it's funny you mentioned that because I think like, especially in those kind of years of the Sun Belt that we're talking about, especially like 2011 to 2014, when it was still kind of trying to restore its footing after, losing so many programs to Conference USA at that time. You could just have a really talented team and probably skate by on talent and win the conference.
Yeah, but here's the funny thing is the coach before Coach Hudspeth, it was Ricky Bussell, I believe. He went from the head coach of UL to becoming a special teams coach. That's a big drop. Not a coordinator, not like a quarterback's coach, but a special teams coach.
Yeah, that's tough.
I will give you a word of advice, though. If UL falls off the rails, do not rehire Billy Napier. No. I have been there, done that. It does not work.
Oh, yeah. UConn got that particular surprise. Yeah, I've never been a fan of rehiring a head coach to a program. I mean, I watched it, and maybe it's because my formative years as a college student, I watched USC go through two coaches, and one of them was returning a guy who had won a national championship, John Robinson, who had been under the legendary John McKay, for years, and then just took the job when McKay went to take over the Buccaneers in the NFL. And he won a national championship, won some Rose Bowls, came really close to winning another one, and then took over the LA Rams. And when he came back, it just wasn't the same. I mean, they made one Rose Bowl, and then the rest of it. And it was funny too because I remember talking to talking to people because again they fired him and hired an even less successful coach, Paul Hackett. But I remember talking to folks who were around the program at USC, and they said he just had kind of forgot how he ran the program as like a club. It was just sort of like, hey, all the guys get to kind of relax. Seniors could kind of take it easy. He kind of still ran it in almost a way where in the late 70s and mid 70s, you could get away with a college football team just relying on pure talent and winning that way. But even by the mid 90s, it just wasn't that way. So the game had passed them by a bit. But sometimes, yeah, you get those examples of guys who come back occasionally. I'm not saying, there's exceptions to the rule, but those are exceptions to the rule. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
That Fiesta Bowl, I was 10 years old for that Fiesta Bowl. I have yet to see a UConn winning season, and I am now 22, about to turn 23.
Oh, man. It's astonishing to me how some of that. Yeah, gosh, it's so funny to think I forgot they were in the Fiesta Bowl. It's embarrassing. I honestly forgot that was a.
It's better forgetting.
Well, the game itself, yeah, okay, yeah. Oklahoma definitely had a. They were Oklahoma, but
that was Edsall was on the plane to Maryland right after that game.
Oh, you're right.
Let me get going, fellas. Great to talk to you.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for joining us. And if any of you'd like to join the conversation, hit request. We just love talking college football. Love to talk to you. It may not take and this evening we may not take too long, only because it is Valentine's Day and schedules are a little bit busy. Both my co-hosts are not able to make it. I am at a stage of life where kids and all that stuff. Honestly, things got to end at a certain point for me. Otherwise, my life goes off the rails. But this might be a good time to slowly wrap up. I think this was a nice, quick conversation for a delightful Tuesday evening. I just wanted to thank you for joining me, both the Cajun Killer and to you, all-dressed father. I know it's always weird to call people by usernames.
Thanks for having me. It was good to be on, and roll skis.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I've never heard that one. That's a good one. I like that. Roll skis for UConn. Oh, that's awesome. But all right, well, thank you all for listening in. This was kind of a 30-minute Reddit talk, not Reddit talk. Sorry, I host that too. Reddit teamed up with a newspaper group and asked for somebody on our team to help out, so I help out there. But this was actually our CFB talk, our own talk. 126. We love talking college football on Tuesday nights. We're going to be continuing these as we always do at 10 p.m. Eastern. And then actually, I think starting this next week, we're going to start bringing back guests. So my co-host and I were talking about it. It's like we've had a chance to kind of decompress from the end of the college football season. It's now mid-February. Let's get back to bringing in some of our guests that we've had in the past. So we'll start bringing in some of those and announcing them far in advance. So if you want to tune in, you can. Otherwise, tune in on Tuesday nights. On behalf of myself, Bob Ekayeri, hope you all have a great night. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. And now I'm going to hang up and listen.